Hi, my name's Jasmine, and welcome to Film School Survival Guide. I survived film school, so allow me to be your emergency life jacket as this plane crashes. So let's get started. Today we're talking about three-point lighting. She's been there for us in the best of times and in the worst of times, and today I'm going to walk you through it. If you are here, it probably means that you either love my personality or you're a true beginner. Three-point lighting is used in a ton of film stuff and is typically the basic fundamental lighting setup, and then you can go from there. We call it three-point lighting because it has three lights. Crazy. I know. There's a key light, a fill light, and a backlight, or sometimes it's called a hair light. Your key light is going to be your main light. It's usually the brightest light, and it's typically in front of your subject and a little bit off to the side. Your fill light is going to be also typically in front of the subject and on the other side. The idea of the fill light is that it is being used to fill in the shadows that is cast by the key light. So depending on how much or how little fill light you will have stronger or softer shadows. And then you have your backlight or your hair light. This is usually behind and sometimes a little bit above your subject. What this does is that it creates a halo around the subject, which separates them from the background. That's why sometimes we call it the hair light, because it'll catch on their hair. Sometimes what you'll hear referred to is high key or low key lighting. Low key lighting means that you have very harsh, sharp shadows on your subject. And that is because your key light is very bright and you have low fill. Examples where you might see that kind of lighting would be like in very tense, dramatic moments. Film noirs, for example, a lot of shadow on the face. But an example where you might see opposite, where you have softer key and more fill, so that it creates very soft shadows or even no shadow on the face. You might see that in like a romantic comedy. That's a staple of like a Hallmark movie or a touching reunion at the end of a film. And then times where you might have your backlight or hair light really high would be if you're trying to create a silhouette of somebody. They'd be completely backlit if you want a total silhouette and you don't want any lighting coming from the front. So you've definitely seen all of these things before, but knowing the industry terminology and how to apply it is really crucial if you're trying to make well-lit films that is going to help you serve the story, because ultimately that's always what we're trying to do. We're trying to serve the story, we're trying to serve the client, we're trying to serve the ultimate purpose or goal of the project. So if you can do that by creating different shadows or softer shadows or a silhouette, then great, now you know how. Once you get comfortable with it, you're able to use this for all sorts of different things. It's great as a standard for interviews, podcasts, documentaries, that kind of thing. But it's also used all the time for other more dramatic things as well. You can completely play with it. The levels, the colors. Do I want 3 lights? Do I just want 2? Another thing you need to consider when lighting is the actual source of the light. Of course, we're going to be using professional lights or maybe just a light that you got on Amazon for $20. That's what I do. But depending on where you're at in your story, you're going to want to have your lighting be sourced within the narrative. You're going to want to have diegetic lighting. What that means is the lighting isn't just coming from nowhere. You'll see a lot of times in stories that they will utilize this to their advantage, whether it be a neon sign, or you'll see a lot of times that beautiful warm yellow versus a cool blue. That's like a classic lamp versus moonlight. But you can absolutely use three-point lighting to your advantage to use color as well. Even though it is just a basic setup, it's going to make sure that your subject is visible, well lit, has contrast on their face, and is separated from the background. And really, especially if you're just starting out, what more could you ask for? Some terms that you're going to want to know: high key lighting, low key lighting, key light, fill light, and backlight or hair light. So these are 2 of my little lights that I have. Sometimes they're called MCs, but I'm sure they go by lots of different names. They're basically just like a little light that you can use in small spaces or to add just a little bit of glow. So I'm going to use these as an example of different lighting. So if we look at this light here in front of me, it is to my right and in front of my face. What that's doing now, though, is casting the shadow of my nose onto the other side of my face, which is fine if that's what I want to go for. And if I turn my front light off, that difference is going to be even more stark. I now have only this key light and the little backlight on. Now, if I turn this backlight off, look at how harsh those shadows are in my face. Very sharp, very harsh. And I can, again, because you can play around with your lighting, change the angle of this so I can have more of my face in shadow or less. Now then, let's take a look at it with a fill light. Oh, it's blue. Here we go. So now I have a second light. I'm going to put it on the opposite side of my face. Now, what you may be noticing is Jasmine. That just looks like the key light. That is because if you only have one light, it is going to be the key light. So without having the second light over here, it's going to be a key. It doesn't matter what side it's on. If it's the main light, it's the key light. Okay, so I've just dulled the intensity of our fill light so that you can see what it looks like so that it's not exactly even, because typically, again, a fill light is actually going to be less bright than your key light. You still want to have some shadow and contrast, so you don't want to completely wash out their face with just even lighting. I mean, you can, again, if that's what you're going for, but typically that's not the goal. I'm going to clip this on. What if I use the tools that I have correctly? So this is what it looks like with both of the lights. Now without the fill light, it looks like this. So you can see that I still have a little bit of a shadow being cast from my nose, from my eye socket. Definitely a lot less than with this. Okay, key light, backlight. Without the backlight, do you see how my hair just kind of blends into the background? But with the backlight, you can really see the individual strands, which helps me to stand out. Obviously, you want to avoid making it look like they are an angel sent from heaven. And with that is all my knowledge on 3-point lighting. If you have more, feel free to leave it in the comments below and let me know a really cool lighting setup that you've liked, whether one that you've done before or if you saw something in a movie or a show that you loved. I would love to check it out. Thank you so much for watching. Good luck surviving till the next one.